following skit is in Bisaya, the mother tongue of Ray and D. Regular program in English will commence after the intro music. Ay, salamat nakahawa na gyud sa opisina.
Oh,
Kapoy, magtagalog. Uy, di ko kay ba mo Tagalog ba?
mao gani, nosebleed ka ito itong mga office mate. Uy,
Oh,
saan man nang maay na lang nana ta diri, gigutom na kayo ko. Humuta ba?
kumot kayong sudan ba?
Kung sino mo nagustuhan diya?
Kana, unsa kana? Kana na isabaw.
Oh, utan, oo, gusto kong utan. O
Sige,
niya.
kana.
Oh,
Uy,
kana.
ayog kalimot ha nga. Nanabitas Manila. So, Tagalog, kung mag-order ka, for example,
Ayo.
ang sudan, dili na sudan. Ulam na siya. Niya ang,
Ulam, okay.
niya ang kanon, kanin na siya, kanin.
Ah, so giilisdan lang ang letra day gimong ay, sige gets
Oo,
na
kana,
nako.
inana.
Oh,
Sige,
gets
sige.
na ako. Sige. Uy, kita
Hi
na, kita
po,
na.
ano
Ako
po
na.
sa inyo?
Ma'am, pwede pa-order ng kanin at ng utin? Hello everyone, welcome to the 48th episode of Banana Q Podcast. Guys, sorry if you did not understand the cold open. That's because we forgot that you can't put subtitles in a podcast. Oops.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
actually Bisaya, our native tongue, right? D?
Yes.
Yeah, which is the second most widely spoken language in the Philippines next to Tagalog. In fact, there was a debate that Bisaya should be the national language. Yeah, I think a lot of people automatically think that there are more Bisaya speakers because geographically, the land size of Visayas and Mindanao is larger than Luzon, right?
Yeah.
But not a lot of people know that actually Luzon is much denser than Visayas and Mindanao, meaning there are more people confined in a particular space. So actually, there's a
Yeah.
lot more Tagalog speakers than Bisaya speakers. So their claim doesn't hold water.
Yeah. So there's this article from Inquirer.net that they had this survey in 2014, and Filipino or Tagalog is cited as the language of the home by 37.8% of the people, whereas the Cebuanos or the Bisaya, I suppose, is cited as home language by 26.7%. So there is actually a big gap, like it's more than 10% gap. So there's actually still more Tagalog people than Bisaya. Visayas and Mindanao, I think a lot of Bisaya people are there, but then I think most people are living in Luzon because probably the opportunities
Yeah.
are there and all that.
Yes. Same as us. Like, we went to Makati for our first
Yeah.
job because the opportunities are there. So people tend to gravitate towards the capital. And that's why most of them would settle in Manila. And therefore, once they have offsprings, their children would naturally speak Tagalog, right? Because
Yes.
why would you speak Bisaya in Manila? Nobody would understand you other than your mother or father.
Yes, that's true. So let's start at the very beginning of the history of the Philippines. Not the history of the Philippines, the history of the Filipino language.
Yes.
The Philippines is a multilingual state with more than 175 living languages originating and spoken by various ethno-linguistic groups. There was no one single common language across every cultural group in the Philippine archipelago when the Spanish arrived in the 16th century. So while Spanish and English were considered official languages during the American colonial period, there existed no national language initially. So on November 13, 1936, the first National Assembly of the Philippine Commonwealth approved Commonwealth Act number 184, creating the Institute of National Language and tasking it with making a study and survey of each existing native language, hoping to choose which was to be the base for a standardized national language. Can you imagine they had to go through 175 languages? Like, that's a lot. So the Institute of National Language adopted a resolution on November 9, 1937, recommending Tagalog to be the basis of the national language. On December 31 of the same year, Quezon proclaimed Tagalog as the basis of the Wikang Pambansa or the national language, giving the following factors. 1. Tagalog is widely spoken and is the most understood language in all the Philippine regions. 2. It is not divided into smaller daughter languages like Visayan or Bicol are. 3. Its literary tradition is the richest of all native Philippine languages, the most developed and extensive, more books are written in Tagalog than in any other autochthonous, okay, I don't know what this means, guys. What is this? Autochthonous Philippine language, but Spanish. But this is mainly by virtue of law. And Tagalog has always been the language of Manila, which was the political and economic center of the Philippines during the Spanish and American eras. And the last one was that Spanish was the language of the 1896 revolution and the Katipunan, but the revolution was led by people who also spoke Tagalog. So apparently the Bisaya are not leaders and they're not patriotic enough. So because of that, Tagalog deserves the national language seat. Anyway, on June 7, 1940, the Philippine National Assembly passed Commonwealth Act number 570 declaring that the Filipino national language would be considered an official language effective July 4, 1946. So the question is though, after this, was the officially appointed national language actually accepted by all Filipinos?
No, I don't think so. There were a lot of non-Tagalogs, most especially Cebuanos, who protested against the decision. Like, they feel that, how come you're choosing one language over ours? No, it should be fair. It has to be a combination. It has to be a collection of all the dialects spoken in the Philippines for it to be truly a national language, right? It can't be one national language. So there are a lot of riots, a lot of protests. But I wonder, those riots and protests, what language are they using to protest, right? Because if they protest in Bisaya,
then the people won't understand them.
The national, what's that? National Language, Institute of National Language?
Yes, I think so.
Wouldn't understand them. So I would expect them to protest in Tagalog.
Probably.
Right? Tanggalin ang Tagalog. Something like that, right?
Or maybe they were protesting in English or Spanish just to prove a point or something.
To use your friend's words, Konyo cabron.
What?
The Cutie Minute from last
Oh,
time.
yeah.
In 1959, in order to appease the protesters, they changed the name of the national language from Tagalog to Filipino. So that, okay guys, you know what? Our national language is not really Tagalog. It's Filipino. But in essence, it's still Tagalog. So all the more protests happened. So there were these two groups of purists that held counter movements against the Filipino or the Tagalog as the national language. And there are two main campaigns of the purists. One is campaigning totally against Tagalog. Like, we don't want Tagalog. That's it, full stop. While the other was, hey, we don't like Tagalog because it's not inclusive enough to include any of the dialects. So you should create a national language. So these were the two main camps of protesting. And then 20 years later, in 1971, it again was revived that, hey, you know what? We should try and stop this protest. This has to stop. Okay, well, what should we do? And so there was an assembly of delegates to really understand and try to create a national language, a more inclusive language to be our national language. But the problem was, even if they collected a lot of delegates from all over the Philippines, non-native Tagalogs, the conclusion of the assembly was, you know what? Let's just use Tagalog, guys.
Because it's too complicated, right?
Yeah. So maybe they dabbled into it. Okay, let's try, instead of using this word from Tagalog, maybe let's try and borrow a Bisaya word. And then probably the grammar doesn't sound right anymore. And, it's getting harder and harder to keep track of, hey, what word should we use here?
Yeah.
And then they gave up. And they were like, you know what? Let's just keep it status quo. And let's change the name to Filipino. So from Filipino to Filipino, they just changed the letter from P to letter F. Good job, you guys. This is a standing ovation to the delegates assigned to create a national language. Thank you for changing the letter P to letter F, making it harder for Bisaya to pronounce it.
Cebuanos usually don't like speaking Tagalog. Is that really the case?
I would say, yeah. It's not that we don't like speaking it. Probably it's just that we're not comfortable using it. For us, our only opportunity to use Tagalog as a language is that one subject that we have in school.
Yes.
And our teacher is not a native Tagalog as well. So sometimes she would use Bisaya. Oh, ma'am, you're using Bisaya. Because she's not also a native speaker. She's
funny.
bound to make mistakes. So outside of that subject in school, we don't really use it. During our break time, we talk to our friends, we use Bisaya. And then in any other subject, we use English. So it's always been English and Bisaya. And then maybe only 2% of our time we use Tagalog. So for me, I'm not comfortable enough to use the language because I'm afraid that I might use the wrong grammar, I might use the wrong word, similar to how I would approach English, right? Because it's not really my native tongue, and so I'm hesitant. I suppose if you are, a big fan of TV, then you watch a lot of shows in Tagalog, then I suppose getting used to listening to the language somehow would boost your confidence a little bit.
Yeah.
But for me, even watching TV, I don't watch Tagalog spoken television. I probably would watch MTV, which is music. Maybe news, and even news in Cebu, it's in Bisaya. So it's
okay.
really, really hard. There's not enough avenue for me to actually learn the language. And I would say it's also a bit confusing to switch between Bisaya and Tagalog because the grammar is very similar. You have the past tense, the present tense, the structure of the sentence is the same. I think the only difference is in Tagalog, they're more polite because whenever they speak to the elderly, they would use po and opo. But Bisaya, we'd never use po and opo. That's why when we go to Manila, we are often thought of as bastos, right?
Yes, or rude,
rude people because we don't use po and opo. It's not that we don't want to. It's just that we don't use po and opo.
Yeah, we didn't really use that.
Yeah, it's a struggle.
Even if we're speaking in Tagalog, right, we don't use po and opo. And in Bisaya, there's no such thing like an equivalent of po and opo in Bisaya. So it's not a habit that we cultivated because of that.
Maybe for Tagalogs and Bisaya, it's the same for us. Like when we meet somebody we know and elderly, we would mano, right?
Yes.
We call that in Bisaya bless. So bless.
Bless.
That's the sign of respect. And everything that happens after that, it's as if we are equals. Like we don't use po and opo anymore.
Your other way of showing respect is still like, in the way you call them, right? You would still call them manang. Manang is the ate equivalent, or manong, which is the kuya equivalent. Yes,
exactly. Like you use a term.
Yeah, you use those terms. I guess that's enough. That's it. I don't think we've ever mentioned it in previous episodes that the reason why our podcast is in English really is the first reason is because Ray didn't feel that he was confident enough to speak in Tagalog.
Nahirapan ako sa kalisod.
Yes. Exactly. So that is the number one reason why. And we thought like if we spoke in Bisaya, it would reach fewer people. So we decided to use English instead. And also the second reason is if we use English, then our friends that we have accumulated in the past decade or so who are non-Filipinos, because we have been outside the Philippines, right? If they want to tune in, then they can do so as well. So hi guys.
Yes. Hi guys. We're doing this for you.
All right. So yes, and there you go. Now we have finally told the real reason why we're in English. It's not because we are pasocial or something.
Yeah. No, we're not.
It's the opposite reason.
It's that simple reason. I would say it will be harder for us to edit because I would make a lot of mistakes because it's just that I'm not comfortable with it. So I mentioned about the similarity, right? And somehow that trips me up. Like one classic example is when you're asking somebody if he is Filipino in Tagalog, you would say, Filipino ka ba? But in Bisaya, Filipino ba ka?
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
like, you're just switching the ka and the ba.
Yes, that's true.
So to me, it was like, well, I would somehow speak in Bisaya, but my intention was to speak in Tagalog. But I got confused because they're so similar. And some words as well, like you say rice. In Tagalog, you say bigas. But in Bisaya, it's bugas. Yeah. So just one letter, the I becomes a U. Tricycle is tricycle in Bisaya.
Is that how it's spelled actually?
Is bicycle. Google is Google. Then you would say, so there's a pattern. You just change the O in Bisaya or U in Bisaya to I, right? But it doesn't work.
Yeah, that doesn't
because
always
a tup in Bisaya is not a tip.
Yeah, I actually made that mistake before in Manila. I was telling the story of how the expression "it's raining cats and dogs" came about. So it has something to do with the dogs and the cats being on the roof. So I was telling this story in Tagalog. And my colleague who is Bisaya was like dying from laughter. He said, "There is no a tip."
Because you would make that association, right? That,
Yes.
I sense a pattern. I just need to change the U to I. But no. So that just makes the language learning for me a little bit more complicated. And
Yeah.
you know what? I don't really use the language that much. So why bother? That was
Yeah.
my mentality. In school, at work, we use English or Bisaya, just those two. So to me, speaking to somebody like you, right? Talking to you, and I know that you know Bisaya,
Yes.
it feels awkward to talk to you in Tagalog.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
Except if we are with Gemma. Like, for
Yeah, of
example.
course. When there's somebody who can't understand, then
Yeah.
it's natural for us to speak in a common language. But like for the two of us, when we plan our episode,
Yeah.
when we research, we speak in Bisaya, and that's natural. And I don't know, it just feels weird for us to speak in Tagalog. It's
Yeah.
not
I
natural
think
at all.
I think that's common anyway, not just with Bisaya but with anything, right? Like Filipinos, when we're talking to each other, we tend to switch to the language that we all know, which is either Tagalog or Bisaya, whoever you're talking to, right? That's why it becomes a habit. Even when you're abroad, like, you're speaking amongst yourselves and you're speaking in Tagalog and people are saying like, why are they being rude?
Yeah.
I think you are like my mom. So my mom is Bisaya. So she moved to Zamboanga when she was in her 30s. So by that time, it's really difficult to pick up language, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
we know that. So she came from Bisaya place as well in Mindanao, Bukidnon. So she was also not comfortable speaking Tagalog, just like you. Actually, there's a funny story about this. I didn't realize that she had this issue. Like one time when I was already working in Singapore, then my mom visited me in Singapore and then she met my Tagalog speaking friends. And then I had to live them for a bit. Like, I had to buy food or something. And then when I
Yes.
came back, I was surprised. Like, how come everyone is speaking in English? You know? I think this is not, as you know, this is not normal for Filipinos. So I was like, what's going on? And then I realized at that moment that my mother actually doesn't know how to speak Tagalog well. I guess I just never saw her in, a situation where there were Tagalog speaking people, I guess. So I always speak to her in Bisaya. I see her speak in Bisaya. I just didn't notice that she actually doesn't speak Tagalog. You know what I mean? So, so she's just like you because she was just always surrounded by Bisaya-speaking people. Maybe even though she moved to Zamboanga, her friends were still Bisaya. That's why she never really had opportunities to learn speaking it very well. But she could understand it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. But she just didn't feel like she could articulate that well.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I'm surprised though. Like your mom is not comfortable speaking in Tagalog, but how come you are comfortable speaking in Tagalog? Like why is it so different for you?
Yeah, I think it's because of who you're surrounded with. So the thing is, Zamboanga is not as homogeneous as Cebu or as my mom's place, which is Bukidnon. So it's more like a melting pot. Zamboanga locals, they speak Chavacano as their main language or dialect, but there are also lots of people who migrated from the nearby places and they speak Bisaya and Tagalog. There's also Tausug and Samal, which is the languages of the Muslim people.
Yeah, they are, what's that? Brave people, right?
Tausug? I guess.
Yeah, Taong Isog.
Maybe. I have no idea if that's true, but sure. But yeah, so there are so many languages or dialects. So you have a choice. Not really a choice, but it depends on who you end up around. For me, I suppose, obviously, I'm Bisaya. I grew up in Bisaya, but my close friends ended up speaking Tagalog. So that's why I became more fluent in that instead of Chavacano. Actually, I couldn't really speak Chavacano. I could understand it. I only learned to speak Chavacano when I was in high school because I joined this organization and most of the people spoke Chavacano. So I was forced to speak.
You're forced to learn. And now that you've mentioned that in the Philippines, we have a lot of languages. So it does make sense to have a national language, right? So what do you think are the main benefits of having the effort of actually putting it in the constitution to have a national language? I know those guys gave up, the National Language Institute. They gave up in trying to come up with a national language, but we are forced to learn Tagalog or Filipino as our national language. What do you think are the benefits?
I think the benefit, obviously, is that we can all communicate with each other no matter from which part of the Philippines we are. I mean, we need a unifying language for everyone to understand. Like, if there is a news, like, can you imagine if there was no national language, then if there's like breaking news and then it needs to be translated in the 100-something dialects. Like, that's gonna take time. What the hell?
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess that helps in that way. And I suppose like even maybe documents in the law, or if they pass a bill, it's probably in Tagalog, right?
Laws right now, I think it's in English because
Okay.
we have two main languages, English and Filipino. But I think most of our documents, our government papers, they're all in English. When you go to your city hall and request for birth certificate, even birth certificate, that's English. Like,
Oh yeah, that's true.
all our records are in English.
Yeah, I think I can only think of one then. It's just that there are a lot of overseas Filipino workers. Like, if you get thrown in Japan, you could understand each other if you want to speak and not be understood by other people. You can speak Tagalog.
If you wanna talk behind their backs, if they wanna backbite somebody.
I just suddenly remembered something. So this colleague of mine, he's Filipino. We met in the pantry. And of course, there were other people around us. And he told me, galing ako sa Panayam. And I'm like, what is Panayam?
What's
I forgot.
that? Yeah.
Because
What's Panayam?
It's too deep. It's interview. And I completely forgot. And I asked him, what do you mean? And then in the end, he actually had to tell me in English anyways.
So that person's trying to hide the fact that he went for an interview, and of course
Yes.
you're in the office. He doesn't want the
Other
the
people
boss
to
know that
overhear.
he went
Yeah,
for
but
an
then
over-
I kept asking, what is that? What is that? And then in the end, he just had to whisper to me, interview.
fail.
Fail. It's so fail. So funny. That's all that I could think of in the pros. But what about the cons?
I would say if there are less people talking the dialects because they are somehow forced to talk in another language, the national language, then eventually there will be death in the dialects, right? I mean, it's already obvious. Like whenever we speak to somebody older than us, maybe our grandparents, there are a lot of words that they use that we don't.
Yeah.
And that's because over the generations, we somehow prefer not to speak in the olden Bisaya anymore because there are probably more convenient Tagalog words that we know of that we use. So our dialects have become maybe a lighter version of what it used to be.
Yeah, true.
It's a language that's slowly and slowly evolving into, I don't know, non-existent. So an example would be Latin, right? Latin is that's a completely dead language now because nobody is speaking on it. And even though we still see it in monuments, in wherever, but the language itself, nobody's using it. And so no new words are being created. So I'm afraid that would be where the dialects are going. So I would say that also written forms of art or spoken forms of art like poetry, storybooks in the dialect also would continue to dwindle because nobody's using it anymore. Like if I'm an artist, if I'm a writer, why would I write a novel in Bisaya if I'm constricting myself? My audience is like very few people.
Yeah,
right.
true.
So there's
Like for
not
us,
enough
right?
incentive anymore. Yeah, like us. Like we could have used dialect here, but we were conscious of the fact that we're limiting our audience, and so we used a totally different language. So I would say that's one main disadvantage of forcing a national language, and maybe another one is. That feeling like the non-Tagalogs, the Cebuanos who protested all throughout 1930s to 1960s, like for 3 decades, they've been protesting about Tagalog or Filipino as the national language. I think they somehow felt that whatever it is that they know of, the dialect that they're speaking, is somehow inferior than the national language. So that feeling that, maybe I'm not good enough, I'm part of an inferior group because the dialect that I know, my mother tongue, is not the national quote-unquote language. So I think those are two main things that I can think of as a negative effect. But honestly, those two things don't really outweigh the fact that there are greater benefits of having a national
of
language.
course.
Like, can you imagine? You mentioned the translation, right? What if you're getting sued and then I need translator? I can't. What the hell do you speak? Bisaya. Hey, do we have Bisaya translator there? Or what if one of those other 180 languages, like it becomes more administratively expensive to run a government or to run a country, I would say.
Okay, I think another con would be like, because as you said, there's a preferred language, right? Which is in this case, the Tagalog. Then people just prefer to focus on that, like in entertainment, for example, in the Philippines, right? Movies, TV shows, The popular ones are usually just Tagalog. Even the ones that are being shown in Mindanao and Cebu, like in my place, there's a Chavacano TV Patrol, and I'm sure you also have a Bisaya TV Patrol. And there are like a few shows, but it's not really like mainstream.
Yeah.
And they don't really get as popular as Tagalog ones. And actually, there was this article I found on jpthehistorian.medium.com. So this is actually about this TV show that I remember watching as a kid, which is called Sigut the Wonderful. Did you ever watch this?
I've heard you mention that. I've never seen an episode of that. So what is Sigut the Wonderful?
It's actually a goat. Goat is a goat.
Because that's how we Bisaya pronounce goat, right? Oh, Sigut.
Yeah.
Goat.
Sigut the Wonderful. So he's the wonderful goat. And he's wonderful because he actually poops gold.
What?
Anyway, this article is saying that there's always been an issue of being Bisaya on national spotlight, especially in the cruel world of show business. Wow, cruel. Anyway, he says, all the shows we see on television are in Tagalog because our favorite artistas or actors, from Angel Locsin to Ding Dong Dantes and even to the likes of our homegrown talents Kim Chu and Vina Morales, are forced to speak in the national language because it is the only way to further their career. So, Kim Chu and Vina Morales, by the way, they're both Bisaya, so that's why he mentioned their names. So, the formation of our national language under Manuel L. Quezon has sidelined the language spoken by most people from Visayas and Mindanao. The advent of television, Tagalog remained the dominant medium in the dissemination of information, and Visayan remained on the periphery of our national consciousness. Speaking Visayan on air is a rare occurrence, and even if there is someone speaking on television, dubbing and subtitles are needed. The rest of the country know less of our deep cultural roots in television dramas and plays. It seems that producing a Cebuano language television series with all Cebuano actors can be a risky and stupid idea because it has never been done before. Whether a Visayan role is present in our favorite staple telenovelas, these roles are always relegated to typical subservient katulong or housemaid roles. And oftentimes, non-Visayans portray us in a stereotypical, caricaturish, and funny way possible, to the point it is somewhat similar to blackface in Americans' deep racist South. So, I guess he has a point. So, there is a discrimination against the Bisaya people, right? Like, if you are Bisaya or if you have an accent, right? Like a heavy Bisaya accent. Or you have a punto, as what they call it, right? Like, people make fun of it. Or you're deemed you don't sound polished or you don't sound well-educated. Just because you have a heavy Bisaya accent. So, I guess that's one of the cons.
Yeah, I really don't like that. Like, the discrimination part is really hurtful, right? Because you're demeaning someone. That reminds me of a real scenario that I was when I was that high school? No, I think we were in college already. So I joined a contest. So we went to Manila. I was with my teacher and two other classmates. And then upon arriving at the airport, we took a cab going to the hotel. And then the taxi driver knew that we were, from Cebu. We spoke with a punto or a dialect. And then we heard in the intercom, so taxi drivers have their own kind of intercom to talk to other taxi drivers, right? And they were referring to us as danggit.
Oh my God, that is so. Oh
so they were talking about a fresh batch of passengers arrived at the airport. I have a danggit passenger, something like that.
Okay, for the people who are not Filipinos, danggit is actually dried fish. Is that a Bisaya name?
It's a delicacy in Cebu. It's like a very flat dried fish, and it's so delicious if you deep fry it. It smells so good.
No, it doesn't actually smell good, right? It smells stinky to other people. But I think,
durian.
it's like that. But maybe it's kind of a derogatory term in a way because maybe because it's stinky. We're not saying that all of the Tagalogs are this way, obviously. But my mom, she also liked to talk about that. Like, she felt that the Luzon people are, what's api?
Api. There's that. Like, a criminal mind has that complex, right? Wherein they feel that they are superior.
Yeah, I suppose
Contempt.
so.
They have
Maybe, or they, maybe it's not just her, but I think it's a sentiment probably of like, you know, a lot of Bisaya people that the Tagalog people feel superior. They always feel as though they are better than the Bisaya people. And even like in the politics, suddenly there's this whole politics thing again. Like how come most of the presidents of the Philippines are usually from Luzon or Tagalog speaking presidents, right? Of course, excluding Duterte. And sorry, the first one, right, you mentioned was actually
Sergio Osmeña, but
Yeah.
he was then vice president, but because of the death of Manuel Alcazar during the World War, he became the president. So he became president, but it wasn't through voting. It wasn't through popular vote. He was in succession to the death of then President Manuel Alcazar.
Yeah, so I think before that, there was this whole scenario. So it's not just the language. It's generally, I think, the people in Visayas and Mindanao feel that they're, I think oppressed was the word I was trying to look for. So they feel oppressed by the Luzon people, that the government, the ones who are the seats of power, their focus is just on improving Luzon, or it's just all about Luzon and nobody cares about what happens in Visayas and Mindanao. As you said, all the opportunities are in Luzon, right? That is why even for us, we both went to good schools, but then we felt like we couldn't stay in our respective hometowns because there just isn't enough opportunity. In my hometown, I don't think we had any global companies, for example. Like, that's not a thing at all. So it's not just language-wise, it's this whole, all this other agenda and all that. But I mean, just in a nutshell, I'm sure there's a lot more over. We weren't expecting to go this deep. But anyway, so let's go back to the language, shall we?
Yes. Let's go back. And I think now that we've mentioned discrimination, right? And I think it's high time for us to also discuss how do we avoid this feeling of Visayas being oppressed by Tagalogs? How do we at least lessen the discrimination in the use of language? And I think one is, please, if you're from Luzon, if you're a Tagalog speaker, don't make fun of people who have an accent.
Yeah.
Right? Because first of all, we Bisaya, we learn the language. It's not our native tongue, but we take the effort of learning the language. And so it really takes time and practice for us to be perfect about the language, especially that it's a subject or it's a language that we don't normally use, right? So maybe we've only read about that word, or maybe we heard somebody say it and we haven't really spoken that word. So we really are prone to make mistakes. So please don't make fun of people who has accent or has, it's not comfortable speaking the language. And then also, if you're the Bisaya or if you're the non-Tagalog who is at the receiving end of the discrimination, also learn to take pride and, stand up for your right. And what I liked about that incident that I mentioned to you when we went to Manila for a contest was our teacher was very vocal about it. She actually scolded the taxi driver.
Oh, wow. That's good. What did she say?
She said it in perfect Tagalog because our teacher grew up in Makati.
I see. Okay.
Her family moved to Cebu and that's why she was a teacher in Cebu, but she spoke in perfect Tagalog and she was scolding the taxi driver. You shouldn't, use that word. That's derogatory. Why are you, referring to Cebuanos like that? Deep inside, I was scared because, Mom, the driver has the control of the taxi. If you piss him off too much, maybe he'll stop in the middle of the highway, and then with our luggages, and we will be out of a mode of transportation. But also, I was proud of her. Of course, she really stood her ground. She was really pointing out that, hey, what you're doing is wrong. You're trying to destroy a kapwa Filipino, a co-Filipino. Like, why are you doing that? We should be the same. We should be helping each other out, not making fun of each other's accents. So that was really, empowering for me. And maybe for people, probably it's hard to do that. Like for me, I'm not very confrontational.
Yeah, I will never do that. Yeah.
It takes guts to do that. But I would say if it's due, like if it's really necessary, I think it's important to also show that, hey, what you're doing is wrong. You shouldn't do that, so that it stops the cycle, right? Because if you stay silent, that means you are agreeing or you're okay with it. But we shouldn't be okay with being discriminated.
Yeah, and I think maybe that guy just didn't realize that what he was doing was wrong because probably he thought it was normal because all of his friends were doing it, but doesn't mean that he's right? So maybe he needed that confrontation so that he would realize that he was wrong. And it's good that your teacher spoke up, definitely.
Yeah, I was so proud, but I don't think we won that contest. So
Well, at least you won something in a way.
Yes, we may not have won that contest, but my teacher won my heart.
Okay, that is so cute. But yes, I think you're right. You should speak up. You're being discriminated against, and people who are listening to this, maybe you are cracking jokes. Do not feel offended that, oh, why are you so sensitive? We are just telling you, as you said, maybe you don't know that, you are hurting people. Maybe it doesn't seem wrong to you, but there are actually a lot of people who feel that way.
Yeah.
I guess the second question I have is, how do we keep the dialects alive then? And I suppose it's good that recently we have the K-12, is it the education, the new education system that we have? Now includes mother tongue. So that means the kids in their respective areas where, like for example, Zamboanga would have a mother tongue, which is Zamboanga. So that ensures that the language will not die.
Yes.
Which is your fear, right? So I think before, I remember my teacher in college was already saying that he was worried that Chavacano was dying. It's not the same Chavacano that he was accustomed to. It had gotten watered down. There was one time, I think it was Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, the former president, right? She visited Zamboanga during, I don't know what year it was. And then I can't remember if it was her mother or grandmother, but anyway, she was related to someone who grew up in Zamboanga. So she said she knew how to speak Chavacano. And then she spoke and I didn't understand like half of what she said. Like, what is that? I saw nosebleed. And then they're saying that's like the original Chavacano. Like, the deep Chavacano words. So that's a perfect example of the language getting watered down through the generations. So it's good that we have that in our curriculum now. And then I guess another way is that, we can keep dialects alive by having entertainment, not just in Tagalog, right? For example, I remember there was this very popular radio play called Milyonaryong Mini.
Yes, I remember that. Can you sing the jingle?
Milyonaryong Mini. And then they decided to make this into a TV show because it was so popular on radio. But the thing is, it was a Bisaya radio play. They decided to make it into Tagalog, which is like, why couldn't they have kept it in Bisaya and they just have subtitles, for example, right? Like, we watch K-drama and we watch all these other TV shows with subtitles, and we can't do the same for our own languages, right?
Yeah.
And then when it became Tagalog, the song became Milyonaryong Mini. Ang ibig sabihin, milyonaryong fake. So like they had to translate. Like why?
Oh, at least they're trying to teach us the meaning of Milyonaryong Mini. Ang ibig sabihin ay
milyonaryong fake. Milyonaryong Mini in English is
a fake millionaire.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like maybe that is an option, right?
Yeah. Maybe the people assigned to do subtitles for Milyonaryong Mini are like the Institute of National Language. They're like, you know what? Screw that. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Let's just Tagalize it or change it to Tagalog.
That is actually entirely possible.
Because you know how taxing it is to subtitle, right? You have to time it perfectly. You have to translate it. You have to play it exactly at the right moment. So it is a hassle, I would say.
Yeah, but then you can just hire someone to do that, and at least you've given someone a job. Make more jobs for Filipinos.
No, that's true. Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. All right, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Cutie Minute.
Time for our followers.
Cutie Minute.
Your thoughts in our voice.
Cutie Minute.
It's not really 1 minute, but we're calling it
Cutie Minute.
So our first Cutie Minute is from buymeacoffee.com. From our, oh my God, she's probably our number one fan, the Eroragya.
Yes.
So she bought us 3 coffees saying,
wow.
Hi, Ray and Dee. Here's your coffee as a simple way of showing my support to Banana Q Podcast. 3 coffees, a bouquet of flowers, and a smiley face. Wow. Thank you for keeping me company, especially when I'm at work. Continue to produce great topics and enjoy what you're doing, as it also reflects on your episodes.
Oh.
Kingkoy din yata. So our episodes are kingkoy din. It reflects. I can imagine Dee's laugh on every episode. Haha. Enjoy your coffee, your number one cutie. Oh yeah, she mentioned it. You're spot on, Eroragya. You are our number one cutie. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And she's not the only one who bought us coffee. After her, we had a second one within like the same day that we launched this. Sep bought us 5 coffees.
Wow.
Wow. Sep is actually, she also left a message before. She's SJP Torres on Instagram. So she said, "Thank you for making my long drives bearable and fun. So glad I could be the coffee genie. So, drinks are on me."
Oh, so sweet.
Oh, these two are so sweet, right?
Ragya and SJP Torres, thank you very much for the coffee.
Yeah, and just to clarify to the listeners who have no idea what is buy me a coffee, they didn't actually give us literal coffees. So there is...
Logistically, that would be very hard.
Yeah, like because actually they're from Canada and US and we're in Japan and Hong Kong. How is that even possible? So what happens actually is on buymeacoffee.com we have our username, which is Banana Cube. Anyway, the link is on this episode, so you can click on that if you want to see the exact link. What you do is you can buy us a coffee. One coffee costs $5. Yeah, so we will get the amount through PayPal. So it's not actually coffee. But of course, you can use that amount to buy coffee if you want. I think we want to use this actually to buy something to give back.
Yeah.
Right?
We don't intend to use it for ourselves. We actually want to give it back to our cuties. So
maybe not all the cuties, right? Just maybe one cutie.
Just
yes.
maybe one. So we're thinking of creating or buying a simple memento. What would you call that? The token
maybe
of
yes.
appreciation, and maybe we will raffle it to all our listeners, and the lucky winner will receive that token. So yeah, if ever you feel generous of giving us a coffee, please do so. Buymeacoffee.com. Rest assured, we will use those funds for meaningful purposes, not for actual coffee, but we will give it back. And
but why not actual coffee? I also love coffee, and you also love
we
coffee.
can.
Okay, we will buy coffees also, but also we will also we will think of what's a cute memento or that we could raffle off, I think on our anniversary episode. So watch out for that.
That's coming up.
Yes.
Oh my god, we're almost 1 year old.
Oh my god.
Crazy.
Exactly. So just watch out for that.
And the next one, this is a message from Madge in Instagram. Jollibee is mentioned in almost all your episodes. I hope Jollibee will sponsor you at Banana Q Podcast.
Yes, I hope they do. Are they going to sponsor us?
We hope so. Thank you, Madge, for that wonderful message. And in this screenshot, I can see from the bottom left corner, the Bluetooth name is Tambok One's AirPods Pro.
Right.
It's a cute name. So Madge is also Bisaya.
Yeah, she is. If you remember a few episodes back, we read an email from someone who was in Singapore. Remember? And you said she was my soul sister. So that's Madge.
So that was Madge. Oh.
Yes.
Tambok One's AirPods Pro. That sounds expensive. AirPods Pro.
Right.
Thank you, Madge.
So our last cutie is another repeat cutie. This is Jackert from Instagram. He said on our episode 43, "Thanks for the shout out. Another fun episode. Carrie Underwood was the country singer who won Idol Season 4 and sang Jesus Take the Wheel. Haha." So this is another, fact check.
Hey, who did we mention as singer for Jesus Take the Wheel?
I said it might be Kelly Clarkson. Why are we always wrong about singers?
I remember. You mentioned Kelly Clarkson is the only country singer that we know of, and we were wrong
again.
So we only knew one singer belonging to that genre, and it was also wrong.
Or I don't even know if she's a country singer. I think it's just that you just mentioned that there was an Idol singer who sang Jesus Take the Wheel, and I said, "Is it Kelly Clarkson?" And you said, "Yeah, that sounds like her," but you were wrong and I was wrong. So we've gotten 2 fact checks now, and they're always about singers. So We should just not mention singers ever because we're wrong about those, apparently.
No. The solution here, D, is we should make an episode about music. That's the proper
yes.
call out.
And actually, now that you mentioned that, I have actually posted about that, guys, on Instagram and Facebook. What's your favorite song? So please send us a voice clip answering the above question in English. Because as we mentioned, our podcast is in English, guys. So optional extras. Explain why or sing a line from the song. If you're brave enough to do that, please do so. So send that via Facebook PM or Instagram DM or email us at bananaQpodcast@gmail.com. Now, it's actually very easy if you're on Facebook Messenger or on Instagram DM, right? So you go to Banana Q Podcast, and then at the bottom, you will see like a microphone icon, which is on the bottom right side. So you just long press on that, and then you can speak. When you release it, then the message will be sent to us. So it should be easy enough, yeah.
It should be easy enough, and I think it should be fun. Just imagine back in the days when you were calling your local radio station, your favorite DJ to play your favorite song. You would request that song, right?
Yeah.
Do the same. Like, pretend that we are DJs and you want to request your favorite song, but instead of just giving the song and the artist, also explain why. That would be fun.
So yeah, instead of talking to the DJ, you are talking to the D-Ray.
Oh, that's a very nice play of words. D-Ray. Because we are D-Ray.
Yeah, we are. So yes, please do that. The more the merrier, guys. So just send them along, all right?
Mr. D-Ray, make a request.
Why are they requesting? They are not requesting, right?
We're requesting you to make a request to Mr. D-Ray. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's it.
That's it, Pansit. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.